Welcome back. I'm Rose Martin, and this is Real Life with Susan Harf, our very favorite life coach. And like you, I can't wait to hear what's on her mind today. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Rose. I'm so happy to see you, and I'm very happy that you decided to join us as well. Today we're talking about it's not fair. Men are not doing as much as women when it comes to household chores.
Do you think they would agree with that statement?
Maybe not, but we're right. So
Okay, well, wait a minute. First, I want to know, how do we define fair?
that's a very good question, and I'm going to explain it fully in a moment because it involves playing a game, and I'm
Okay.
all for games, sometimes. But I'm actually not a game player, as you know, but this is the kind of game I would recommend. It's true that we have different attitudes about what's fair, but I want to start by saying that this is a subject that I've been interested in for a long time. In fact, my master's thesis in 1980, do not do the math, don't think about that number, but my master's thesis was about changing gender roles and its impact on the family. And I read a book during that time called Sequencing, How to Have It All But Not All at Once. And that was written by Arlene Rawson Cordozo. I don't even know if you could still get the book now. As I said, it was 1980. But her idea was, yes, you can have it all if you're a working mother, or even if you're not. You can have it all, but you can't have it all at once. So her notion was, if you're trying to pack too many roles in at the same time, it's not going to work. And try not to do that. That was her point. And that was based on her research. Several decades later, there's another book that I recently read, and I want to show you the book so that you can get it if you choose. It's called Fair Play by Eve Rodsky. And I think this is a very interesting book which talks about a similar subject, except that, well, actually, let's say that what I want to point out first is there isn't an exception to what was being said all those years ago. What Eve Rodsky found out from doing her research and the research of others is that men are still not doing their fair share when they are married to women.
So are you thinking this has to do with people being overwhelmed for what they have to do if they're both working outside the home, or are you saying there's a trade-off of chores no matter what your outside responsibilities may be?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
All of the above. For Eve Rodsky, it started with a blueberry, and here's how. She got a call from her husband saying something happened. What is it? What happened? Is there something wrong with the children? Is there something? What happened? You forgot the blueberries. What do you mean, I forgot the blueberries? You were supposed to get blueberries at the grocery store and you didn't, and now we can't make that salad with the blueberries. And the tone of his voice was kind of hostile. He was upset that she didn't get the blueberries. And she started thinking, yes, I guess I did say I would go grocery shopping after work, but I wasn't able to today. I had too many other things going on, and I have so many things going on in my head that I didn't remember that I didn't remember. And so
I get that. I get
Yeah.
that. So many things going on that you don't remember that you didn't remember.
Yeah, and she didn't like how he was
Yeah.
talking to her, and neither do I. So it started her on a quest of, number one, how come she didn't remember? Number two, she really did say she would, and she felt badly that she didn't. Number three, it's not that he does nothing. He does a lot. But the notion of the question was, it's your fault. It's your job.
So what I take from that is if he really had a problem, he could have gone and got blueberries
Exactly.
and not
Exactly.
even made the phone call.
Exactly.
Like if it wasn't really about the, and then I'm also thinking maybe it really wasn't about the blueberries.
Exactly.
It was more about what are we each doing here and why is this landing on my shoulders?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And so that started her on a quest. And the quest was, how can we work this out? How can we work it out so that it's win-win for both of us? And what ended up happening was, there's a lot that happened with her research. The first conclusion that she came to is that we need to start labeling everything we do as part of our job in the home and keeping it afloat. And that does not just mean housework. It means a lot of other things. We need to start labeling all the stuff we do as work.
Should we only do that if we feel like we have an imbalance or that we have a problem with it? What if you think things are okay and you're pretty even keeled?
Well, then you should still watch our show, but you may not, but you may say to yourself, this is not my problem, but I know somebody for whom this is their problem. Or it may be your adult children who have this problem. Somebody you know might have it if you don't.
I'm thinking about myself and thinking, I don't want my husband to stop doing the dishes and emptying the dishwasher if he tends to realize that, he's taking on a lot more of the dishes than I am, but I might be taking on more things.
You probably
in
are.
the house.
You probably are. And in fact, since you mentioned your husband, I've been instructed to mention mine. And the thing, he wants me to tell you, and you know what? Between you and I, this is true. He does a lot. And when he does, he's not helping me do my job, because neither he nor I believe this is my job. So it's our job. It's our job to keep this ship afloat, called our family, called our household. And when he's doing work, he's doing for our family. That's the work of the family. When he's doing any kind of work, whether it's outside the home or inside the home, it's still work. And he doesn't believe it's just my job. So I'm telling you that right now. But the fact is that if there's any inequality, the first thing we need to think about is every single thing we do to keep this family going is work. And secondly, and this I found very interesting, the research did not depend on whether or not the wife was staying home or going out to work. The imbalance was still there. And the feelings of a mental load, and the mental load are the lists that you keep making in your head. And I think that we all do that. I think we all have a mental load. We all have things that we're thinking about that we need to get done.
And as I get older, they end up being on paper.
Absolutely.
Instead of just in my head.
Yeah, I get you, me too. But we all have that mental list. And in addition to that mental load, what she talks about, and what I want to bring up here, is what she calls the second shift. Those are things that we do before, let's say we do go out of the home to work, before work and after work. And this also comes about when we work at home, because that can be very, very tricky. When you work in the place that you live, you're kind of never not working. Because you're never not in the place where you work for your career, and you're never not in the place where you work for your family. So that makes it even more important to delineate these concepts and delineate the stuff that you do. First of all, relabel it, recharacterize it as work. And here's some examples. When I believe that in a family, 1 + 1 does not equal 2. And what I mean by that is, if you live in an apartment, you're 20 years old, you're living in an apartment with a friend, and you're not related, the two of you are 1 + 1, because you're not creating work together in relationships necessarily. When 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 in our family, it's because by virtue of the fact that we're a family, we are creating work that would not exist if we weren't. So if the wife finds herself writing a thank you note to the teacher, that's work for the family, but she's doing that work. If the mother of the family or the wife finds herself going and buying a birthday present for his mother, that's work for the family that she's doing. If the wife says, I'm going to bed now, I'm going upstairs to bed, people have told me that they do 15 things on the way to bed, and their husband says, I'm going to bed, and he just goes to bed. Now, I know so far this is a very sexist conversation. I hear that. I hear it in my own mind. But the fact is, I'm talking to you about research. And I'm talking about what people have been telling, not just me, my clients, and they do say this to me, but my friends, my family members, and people that I know, and also the research suggests this is still happening. So one woman said to me, I said to my husband, I'm going to bed. And then I picked up all the things on the stairs, and I put each one of them away. And then and before I went up the stairs, I made the lunches for everybody, including my husband, for the next day, and I put in a load of wash, and I put in a load in the dryer, and I was going to go get the load in the wash and put it in the dryer, again, like after I took my makeup off, and go back downstairs and do that. And she rattled off a million other things that she did before she went to bed. And I've had other people, well, first of all, do you have any comments about that, Rose? I'll let you, I'm all fired up.
Well,
I'm all fired up, Rose.
What I'm thinking about is how it is in my family. It was very different growing up because I'm the oldest of 5. And so there was a division of labor in the house, and there was chore day on certain days and other things that we were responsible for. When I put myself in the situation right now, I think, well, there are certain things you do at the end of the night, like let the dog out or prepare for whatever. I think we're in a unique situation with my family right now, is that either one of us goes to bed early or late. Like, I'm an early go to bed, and my husband might stay up later, so he might do a few things after I've already gone to bed. Whereas I'm more of a morning person, so I'll try to do some of these things in the morning. So I'm hearing that, if you're doing so many things before you go to bed, then maybe some of those things could be left for your partner, that they could also do them or share in that. Because with the example of the laundry or the lunches, I would tell my husband, you know where the food is, so make yourself something you like for tomorrow, So what do you do in that case when you feel obligated to do it, but really you shouldn't?
I think that happens to a lot of people, and I think it happens for various reasons. And one of those reasons is that the family has always depended upon the mother to do it, and so she does it. And I've also heard women say to me, you know what, if I left it up to him, it wouldn't get done the way I want. Now that's when we have to sit down and talk about what are the rules in regard to how you want it. And if you want it a certain way, I think you have to be willing to at least to do it, or at least have a conversation with your spouse about, this is what I think is appropriate. If you're going to make the child's lunch, it's not good enough to give him a Snicker bar. Or, we need to talk about what do we both think is adequate for that job. And
I'm kind of laughing at myself right now because I think about the fact that, like, my husband does not like the way I load the dishwasher.
Me either.
Does not like
either.
the way he
either.
thinks all the dishes, he can fit many more dishes in there than I can.
Yeah.
So he's just kind of taken on the dishwasher. And yet if I do happen to slip something in the dishwasher, because I don't want to, yes, I'll find it in a different place.
I don't
be
like that.
Why are you rearranging the dishwasher?
Yeah.
The soap's going to get in there and they're all going to get clean. And he's like, no, this is not the most efficient way to load the dishwasher.
The thing is then, he's already taken that on, right?
He does all the dishes.
And so he's taken it on. Are you okay with that?
I love it.
Absolutely. So you're willing to acquiesce. Whatever he thinks about the dishwasher, you don't care. He's doing it. He's willing to do it. And that's how it needs to be. It's the concern happens when the person says, I'm going to do it, and then they don't do it adequately in your mind. And then the conversation needs to be, you either need to take that on, or I still believe there can be room for conversation to say, well, I have a lot on my plate and I don't want to take that on. I still want you to do it. But is it possible for you to make sure that there is either, if it's going to be a sandwich, that you make sure that there's a vegetable and a fruit in there. If you want to add a little piece of chocolate, fine. But I don't think that conversation needs to be a problem. The problem starts when you believe it's not your job. And the other thing about that is I think that we have some kind of dictum in our world that says, or at least in this country, that says, if you're not paid for what you're doing, it's not valued as much.
And I'm wondering about that because there is an understanding that money equates to a job. Whether
Absolutely.
It is you get hired for a certain job, you get paid this amount of money for a certain job, and there's some kind of leverage or parallel understanding, and that doesn't necessarily happen in the home, or in a lot of other places. I can think of places we go or places we shop or any task that we do. Why do you think it is that there's a financial or some kind of a tit for tat, quid pro quo, that it's worth something more and there's a value placed on that that may or may not be even reasonable?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons. I mean, some people say to me, look, I'm making the family living and we need that money. And so for you to tell me that, I had a husband say this to me, so I'm making the family living, and for you to tell me that when she takes our son to the doctor, there's that's the equivalent of me being in a Zoom call, I don't agree. And I said, well, that's why we got work to do, because we do disagree with that. I absolutely believe that work is work and time is time. So if I'm spending time taking my child to the doctor and holding his hand while he has the shot, that is absolutely as valuable to our family as if my husband was in a Zoom meeting. And in our case, or the reverse.
Sure.
If he was at the doctor's office and I was in the meeting for work. So more often, what I find so curious about this is that women are in the workplace. Hello, we're here to stay.
Right.
And yet, there still is this dichotomy between it's not valued in our society as much if you don't get paid for it. There's two questions here in regard to this. One is the value of work, and I'm saying identify it as such, because that's a step in the right direction. If you identify going to the doctor's office with the child as work, then at least in your home, which is where this needs to be, at least among the people with whom you live, mainly, your husband and your family,
Sure.
if they regard that as equal work to him sitting in his office or being on a Zoom call or going to do a sales call, then that is a step in the right direction.
Okay, so where do families or partners start?
Well, I think that the very beginning is recharacterizing all that you do as is work. And number two, I wanted to say taking stock of what it is you do and making sure that you're including everything, because there's a lot you're going to leave out at first that you just take for granted that you do. But secondly, agreeing that time spent equals time spent. If you're doing something to keep this ship afloat, then that is absolutely the equivalent, the work equivalent, the moral equivalent, in every way, the equivalent of the person who is working outside the home.
Okay, what if
so
people
that's where
don't
we
agree,
start.
though? But what if they don't agree and you're trying to do this first step?
Okay.
And you're met with a lot of resistance about,
Yeah.
like, no, you can have that conversation, but I'm not with you on it.
So I think the way it needs to be approached is, first of all, by the person who's in trouble, by the person who thinks that they're burdened. And usually what I hear from people is when they feel burdened, their personality changes, they're nagging, they're snarky, they bark orders. And what I hear from the partner is she's nagging, she barks orders, she's not nice to me anymore. I mean, I think both people have motivation to change this dynamic. And what I'm going to propose is several things. One is I'm proposing that we take back the right to be interesting. So many women say to me, I thought that I had an equal partner because before we had children, he did as much as I did. And I really don't like the term helping. You're not helping me do my job. When a man is with his children, he's not babysitting. He's providing childcare for his children, just like the woman does when she's with her children. So I don't go for the words, a husband thinking he's babysitting or helping when he's doing chores in the house. But if you come together and you say, I thought you were going to be equal because you did those things. I thought you were going to be an equal partner. You did those things before the kids. But now it seems to be sliding more in my direction. That's when we need to have the conversation. We need to have the talk. Because until we have that conversation, maybe he doesn't know that you feel that way. And so I think that there's motivation in harmony, in getting along better, in feeling like you really love this person. Again, instead of being resentful, because I hear a lot of resentment when people feel like they've taken on too much. And the other thing is, it's not just about quantity. It's also about the quality. So for instance, if you're the one in charge of making sure that there's always toothpaste and not running out, or making sure that there's always light bulbs and not running out, or making sure that the lunches always get made, then you may feel like you have too many of those kind of tasks. So one of the things that I loved about this book is that she identifies all the tasks by category. So you don't even have to make the list. She made it for you. And
What are a few of the categories?
well, the categories have to do with emotional load. So she believed, well, I believe too, emotional load has to do with all of the relationships that are created as a result of this family.
Okay.
The teacher, the in-laws, the neighbors, the friends, all of the things that we
doctors,
do,
yeah.
the doctors, all those
Yeah.
things. Secondly, the second shift, the things that we do when we're not at work. The other thing about that is there's a notion, I think, that if things are invisible, they don't count. So think about all the things you do before you go to work, and your partner may already be at work. They don't even know that you're doing them. Or the things that you don't talk about, the things you take for granted that you do just because you've always done it. You make the bed every day, so it's your job. But really, that's work. So, and they don't even know you're doing it because it's invisible to them because you're doing it when they're not there. So I don't think it's necessary to always have a list when they walk in the door and say, here's the things I did today, here's what I did for you, here's what I did for our family. But that's what happens. You have this mental list when you feel like it's love unrequited. So what I'm suggesting is you sit down together and you discuss, I am overwhelmed. I feel burdened. Tell them how you feel. I feel inadequate sometimes because I can't get it all done. And I need you to be an equal partner. And that means we need to sit down together and we need to decide what are the things we're not going to do anymore, either one of us. We gave up the Christmas cards. We don't send holiday cards anymore. I think I've told you that.
Yeah.
And what are the things that most of the things you're still going to do. You're still going to do the laundry, you're still going to do the emotional load, you're still going to do the mental load of the list. All of these things you're still going to do. So how are we going to get it done so that we feel like we're happy being with each other and we feel like it's an equal partnership?
And it might be that one or the other has a preference for certain tasks in the house or certain
right.
things to do,
That's
certain
right.
chores. That
And-
seems like the first step in order to divide and conquer.
I agree. And what Fair Play, the book says, is divide the chores up by putting the list on cards, and we each take the cards. We each take certain cards. And some cards are worth more points, and some cards are, not that we're assigning points, but some cards are worth more and worth less. In other words, if you say, I'm gonna have the car cleaned once a month, that's not the same thing as making the lunches. So talking it through, deciding what is on the cards. And the other thing is not just say grooming the dog, but what does it take to groom the dog? You have to drive there. Or if you're going to do it yourself, get all the equipment. If you're going to go somewhere to do it, driving there, being there while the dog is being groomed. All of these things are worth your time. So it also has to do with, this program has to do with the time it's going to take and what you brought up from the very beginning, what you will be satisfied with. So if the ultimate answer is, I will not be satisfied with how you do it, then you got to do it. If the answer is, I can compromise with you, and most of the time what I find when I propose this system to clients and I say, how about trying this new system of work in your family?
Do the cards really work? I mean, you have had people
They
try
work.
the cards.
Yes, and they work. They work because they are not only identifying the work, they're giving credit to the person who's been doing the work, and they're also operationalizing the goal by saying it's going to take 2 hours in totality to get this done. So now we all know how much time it takes, we all know what's required, and we know that now we might have time for something other than all of the things that we have to do. And lastly, I want to say something about that, because the goal here is not just being a doormat ever, and it's also not doing just the shoulds. Because we have to be able to, as I said earlier, take back the interesting, take back the right to be interesting. And so what I suggest there is, some people say to me, I had this conversation with a client recently, and she said to me, look, at the end of my day, I'm home taking care of children, she said to me. At the end of my day, I don't have time to have a cause. I really, I want to go and to the rally downtown about something I'm passionate about, but I don't have time and I don't have the energy. So what I say to her, what I said to her and what I say to you about that is start with thinking about it. Start with thinking, what do I want to do besides the role of wife, mother, and career person? What else do I want to do? What's interesting to me? You need to be interesting and interested in yourself.
What about the game?
The game is a really fun thing to do, and I absolutely advise people to do it. And I think that it brings you to a place where you're no longer only thinking about, I have so much to do, so much to do.
And I'm thinking that at the end of this exercise, that both people, both partners, and even the family unit as a whole, if you're involving a lot more people, are buying into understanding and acknowledging the role that everyone plays in having a successful and happy and productive family. So it's not just about chores, it's not just about being overwhelmed, it's not just about being tired, but it's also about play.
Exactly.
Having time to play.
Exactly, it really is. And you're giving your children and those around you a wonderful example of how they should be too.
Susan, we learned a lot about fair play. Thanks so much to Susan Harf in real life. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.